Nothing on the Bonnell Foundation's Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast should be considered medical advice. Medical advice can only come from your CF physician. Cystic fibrosis can be a devastating diagnosis, but living with the disease can bring positivity and a new appreciation for each day. From the Bonnell Foundation in Detroit, Michigan, it's the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast, sponsored by Viatris, Genentech, and Vertex. Here's your host, Laura Bonnell.
Megan Bauer is 26 years old, and she met her fiancé, Alec, when she was at college at the University of Michigan. Meg was diagnosed with CF when she was 5 days old. We wanted to talk about love and CF because so many young people with cystic fibrosis think about it, including my kids. Will someone love me because I have this disease? And it can be a lot. So we thought we would talk about this, and Meg Bauer is the perfect person to talk to. She's been with her boyfriend, now fiancé, Alec, for 7 years. They're planning their wedding in June of 2024. Megan works as a customer experience associate at LinkedIn, and she is active in the CF community. She does the CF Great Strides Walk for the CF Foundation, and she does all kinds of work for the Bonnell Foundation year-round. So it is great to speak with her about this issue. Both her parents are in the medical field. Her dad was an emergency room doctor and her mom a nurse, and she has 3 other sisters who do not have cystic fibrosis, but we will get into that a little bit later. So I'm excited to share this story about Meg and how she found love with the right person who is accepting of her chronic illness. Megan, thank you so much for joining us and doing this podcast with us. I'm so excited. As I was just saying before we got rolling, I wish I had thought of this sooner. You're such a great person, and we really appreciate all the work that you do with the Bonnell Foundation. And I'm glad that we finally have you on a podcast now.
I am so excited, and I really, really appreciate the opportunity. Really glad to be here today.
And we are going to talk about falling in love and, what that means when you have a chronic illness like cystic fibrosis. But I first wanted to start with, you were diagnosed so soon after you were born, but when did you realize that you had cystic fibrosis and what that meant?
So I was diagnosed when I was just 5 days old, a newborn baby in 1996. And my mother and father worked in healthcare. My dad was a doctor and my mom was a nurse working in the ER. And so they knew a little bit about CF, not a ton, but they noticed that I had a rectal prolapse and took me in to get checked out, ran some tests, and they found out that I had CF. And of course, it was quite a difficult time for them during that period. They were first-time parents, both working in medicine, so they knew of the challenges of having a chronic illness. And they were scared about the severity of cystic fibrosis and what that could mean for my quality of life and duration of life. They knew it could potentially be a bad prognosis. And so my parents do recall that time as a period of a lot of uncertainty, anxiety, fear, sadness. At the same time, looking back, it really was a blessing that my parents knew something wasn't right and they caught my CF so early. So that really meant I was able to get treatment and, specialized care right away, which, basically from the time I was born, which I am super grateful for today.
That is wonderful. And even though you had medical parents, I think it's correct to say that you're still not prepared for this diagnosis, right?
Absolutely. I think there was a lot of learning to be done throughout my younger years for my parents, for myself, for everyone in my family. And I think I kind of just learned as I went and really grew up interested in all the treatments, the medicines I was taking, trying to learn as much as I could about my own disease and what it meant for me.
And as the firstborn, this was something that the entire family was learning about, your extended family, grandparents, and that. What are your first memories of when you realized how serious this disease was?
Yeah, CF has been a big part of my life But for many years, it was also a very private piece of my life. CF kind of feels like a backpack I'm always wearing. It's with me at all times, and sometimes it feels heavy, sometimes it's distracting, but a lot of the time I forget about it. It's just, a piece of who I am. I try to carry it with grace, and so it's very ingrained in my everyday life. I don't think CF tainted my childhood really. I think it influenced it. I definitely have memories where CF was there, it was in focus, and I think it is a contributor to some of the mental health struggles that I face, like anxiety. But looking back on my childhood, CF wasn't the main focus. It was a consistent force that I had to maintain. I had to be compliant with my medications, go to my appointments. I knew it set me apart from my sisters and my friends, but that's just kind of how it was. My family and my closest friends knew that I had CF. My family members attended the CF walk each year. We had team med shirts that we would wear. They knew I had to do treatments and take medicines. But outside of my immediate family and my grandparents, I'm not sure how much my extended family and my friends really knew about what CF was like for me. I think it was more maybe surface level understanding for those outside of my very close circle. And growing up, I was very adamant about keeping my CF private from others at school, in sports, in clubs, anyone I met outside of my little circle. I didn't want CF to define me, to change others' perspectives of me, or to get me any sort of special treatment or make any others think I was weak or incapable. And so I kept it very private. I would make plans to make sure that I didn't have to sleep over at my friends' houses so I could go home and do my meds, or make excuses for appointments and took my enzymes in secrecy in the bathroom before lunch. So I really wanted to manage my CF on my own growing up, and on my own, but also with the people that I trusted to care for me no matter what.
Are you more open about it now? And how has that impacted you?
Absolutely. I would say as I've grown up, and especially with COVID, interestingly enough, I've become more open about my CF. I think on one hand, I realized that it's really helpful to lean on the community, the CF community, and to lean on others who have gone through similar experiences. And that there's a lot to be learned and shared if I am open and I am, sharing my experiences. I think during COVID as well, interestingly, I've had to make CF a larger part of me and share that piece more regularly with the public and with others as I kind of navigated the pandemic with a chronic illness and having to be more careful and being high risk. And so that part of my identity, I think, was exposed a bit more during COVID. But yeah, I've definitely come to share a lot about that piece of my life where I can. And I think it's helped me a lot to be more open, and it's helped others to share what I've gone through.
I mean, you're so able to teach other people and answer questions and be of help. Moving on to what this podcast is about is love and CF. How has that journey been for you? And were you worried that someone could love you because, you have this chronic illness?
Absolutely. When I was younger, I would hear people say, my parents or folks in the CF community, that finding a partner might be harder for me because I have CF. And I knew that CF is a big part of my day-to-day life. And so I could foresee the strain it could put on a relationship, the potential worry about the future, uncertainty, the time and effort spent on CF each day, potential struggles with getting married and having children. So I think that kind of factored into me being so private about my CF growing up. And that was something that was definitely on my mind as I thought about romantic relationships and dating and what that meant for my future.
So how did that evolve? Was it an issue?
I think it really wasn't an issue in all my relationships. I disclosed my CF, pretty much in all my romantic relationships early on. And I was met with a lot of support. I don't think it really affected my relationships besides, having to spend time doing my medicines or some potential fears and anxieties about what it meant for my future. But I think I was more scared of reactions and others and romantic partners treating me differently because of my CF. And I didn't experience that, which was great.
That is wonderful. And so tell us about Alec and how he has embraced you, of course, and, your cystic fibrosis.
Absolutely. So Alec is my fiance. We met when I was 19 at the University of Michigan. We were both going to college together. We met over the summer. We were both living in this large house/apartment building, and we were neighbors. And so we started dating when I was sophomore and he was a junior in college. And I remember I told him pretty early on when we started dating that I had CF, maybe after about a month or so. I could see a lot of potential in the relationship. And so I wanted him to know sooner rather than later in case that affected it at all. And I remember when I told him, I was really nervous. I knew he was a good guy, very open-minded, very caring, but I wasn't sure how he would react. And immediately after I told him, he was extremely supportive. He assured me right away that it didn't change anything, it didn't change how he felt. And his main feeling around it, I think, was, he wanted to understand. He wanted to learn more about CF and my experience with it, learn everything he could. I think there was some initial fear there just about my future, what it meant for my health. He was worried about me. He was concerned about me more so than like the future of our relationship. But as he came to understand the severity of my disease, what it looked like for me on a day-to-day basis, I think it eased his fears a bit. And he has been nothing but supportive from day one, which I'm super grateful for. He's the first person I was with that was really, interested in learning everything he could about CF, knowing about all my medications, understanding how he could help me. And throughout our relationship, he's come to several of my CF appointments. He joins me at the annual CF walk that my family puts on, and he reminds me to do my meds when I get sleepy. He's even helped me put on my vest and, get my nebulizer ready when I've been half asleep from a long day. So I'm very grateful to have a partner that cares so much about me and my health. And he has been a really positive influence in my life.
How do your parents feel? I would imagine, being a parent of 2 daughters with cystic fibrosis, that they are so relieved that you have this kind of person in your life.
Absolutely. They are overjoyed. They're very excited that we're going to be getting married next year. And they have been super supportive and super grateful, I think, for our relationship, and that I found someone that is so supportive and caring and, cares about me and my health and helps me be a better, happier, healthier person.
We don't name the drug on the podcast because of sponsorship, but the new CF modulator, are you on that? And what kind of a difference has that made if you are on it?
So I am on it. I have been on it for quite some time. I started off actually with the first modulator that came out when I was in high school and recently switched to the newer version of it. I thankfully have been pretty healthy for most of my life. I'm very blessed in that regard. And I am what doctors and parents describe as very compliant. So I rarely miss treatments or medications. I try to exercise frequently, go to my appointments, follow the advice of my doctors. So I put a lot of importance and stress on doing everything I can to stay healthy. But I think that the new medication has been really helpful. I mean, my lung function and my health has been very, very stable since starting the medication. And I've had a really good experience with it. And so I'm very, very grateful to be on it.
That is wonderful. I mean, it just gives you new hope, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just seems to mentally help as well. Not only the person who has CF, but I feel like the parents as well.
Absolutely. It is a safety net. It is just an extra boost to my health. And I think my parents and loved ones are really grateful that that option is there, not just for me, but for the entire CF community.
I certainly don't see your parents in person like every year or anything, but I know they have a great marriage and I know they're great people. It really must be wonderful for you to know you're going to, that you're working toward this marriage and starting off with all this honesty about your disease. It must be really freeing for you, I would think.
Absolutely. I think my parents have had such a wonderful relationship and have been so supportive of me. And so I've learned a lot from being around them growing up and seeing their relationship with each other and the strength there. And I always knew that I really wanted to emulate that and to have that in my relationship. And so I think it is very freeing to have so much transparency and open communication. That's one of the biggest things I think that is really strong in the relationship that Alec and I have is we're constantly communicating and talking with each other and sharing our ideas and thoughts and feelings. And I think that's really helpful when you have a chronic illness. I'm able to share, how I'm feeling, my fears, my worries, my, plans for the future. And he's really open to it all. And so, yeah, that's a big strength in our relationship and something that we're going to carry living into our marriage.
And hopefully people who are listening to this who are your age or in a relationship, and if they haven't had somebody who's accepting of them with the disease, hopefully this will inspire them to just keep going and find that right person because they are out there.
100%. And I worried when I was younger that maybe they weren't out there, and I went through a couple different relationships where I didn't find that. And then, finding someone who was so supportive and open, even starting from a point where he didn't know about CF, he didn't know what it was, but growing to be such an advocate and big support for me. I think, just the reminder that those types of people are out there. And even as someone with a chronic illness and with all these, challenges and daily struggles, still able to find someone like that who is so loving and I'm able to have such a good relationship.
And because I'm so nosy, of course, I'm going to ask you about your future in-laws, but it is a huge part. Like, what was their reaction and how did you address that? Did Alec just tell them by himself or did you guys do it together? How did that go?
Yeah, thinking back to that, I'm trying to remember because it wasn't a big, rift or there wasn't any, kind of big change or anything like that. I believe that he might have told them, and I've talked to them about it, over the years as well. I think they approached it similar to how Alec did. They were both very supportive and just wanting to understand and learn. Alec's mom worked in healthcare and medicine, and so I think she also kind of understood the challenges of living with a chronic illness. But both his mom and his dad were very open to it. I think over the years, they've been very caring and supportive. When we go on vacations and, I have to do my meds, they are very flexible and understanding. And so it really hasn't been, an issue. There hasn't been any, deep worries about our future. I think it's more, they want to understand how they can support us as we move through this journey together.
And that is wonderful. That's exactly what you want. Mm-hmm. That is the ideal. And if it weren't that way, I think you probably would run. I mean, that is the way it should be.
Absolutely.
So your parents did in vitro and had the triplets, your sisters.
Yep.
How is your relationship with them? And they must be so excited for you about this wedding because you're the first to get married?
I am, yes. So yes, my parents did in vitro after they found out that I had CF. And they had, surprise, triplets, 3 girls, which was fun and crazy growing up with all 4 of us. But I'm very close with all 3 of them. They're each now living their own independent adult lives, working in various fields and cities in Michigan and in Chicago. And I still stay very close with them. They're very excited to be in the wedding next year. They're going to be my bridesmaids and we're going to have so much fun. And I'm the first to get married in my family. So there's a lot of excitement and planning and talk around the wedding happening next year.
That is absolutely wonderful. What do you find maybe that is unique or that was beneficial in sharing the fact that you have a disease? I mean, I've always said to my daughters, everybody has something, we have CF. And it seems like it just opens it up to such a great conversation or just empathy to the fact that, okay, well, we have CF, but you're dealing with this. Or, it just seems that it really can only bring good conversation.
100%. I think, when I've shared about my CF with other CF folks or even others who haven't experienced CF or haven't experienced a chronic illness, I think that level of vulnerability really resonates with others. And I think it makes, others potentially want to share more about themselves and the challenges that they've gone through. And something that I've learned and known is that everyone is experiencing, their own difficulties, whether that's a family member who has a chronic illness or, financial struggles or relationship struggles. Everyone has something. And our thing is CF, like you mentioned. But I think just being vulnerable and transparent and talking through the challenges and how I've overcome them with CF, I think can be beneficial for a lot of people, even if they aren't struggling with the exact same thing.
I think you're right. And I also wanted to ask you just a little bit off topic, but the pandemic was sort of a good thing for the CF community. I know that's a weird way to say it, but because everybody could work from home.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to worry about so many factors. You could fit your treatments in easier. There isn't this rush to go to work because you're able to work from home. How has that impacted your life?
Absolutely. It's important and helpful to focus on kind of the silver linings of the pandemic. And I think that definitely was one. So I started working from home at the beginning of the pandemic with a previous job that I had, did hybrid, went in the office a few times for my previous job midway through the pandemic. But for my current job, I've been working completely remote and it has been amazing. I'm definitely more of a homebody. I love, kind of being in my own space. And so being able to stay home, work on my treatments, whatever throughout the day, be able to exercise so much more easily. We put in a home gym in our home. So really it's all here and I'm able to do it really easily. And my fiance also works from home as well. And so just being able to have that time together, the time to focus on my health and do what I need to do. I even had some virtual appointments with my CF doctor, which have been great. So I think definitely one of the benefits of the pandemic.
And so it is interesting. I could not work at home with my husband, just FYI. I need him to go to the office and I am in my office. So it's going great for you, though. I'm really glad. And of course, we made it work throughout the pandemic and everything. But what do you see as far as your future goes with Alec? Kind of what are your plans once you get married?
Yeah, so we're having our wedding next year, June 2024 in Grosse Pointe, Michigan on the east side. Right now we're in full planning mode for that. So we're very excited to be getting all the details sorted out for the wedding. I think after that, thinking about our future plans, we bought a house last year. So we're living in that house now and being able to have a home that we own is really awesome. And so I think just continuing to work on the house and build a home for ourselves is great. We also right now have been working with my CF doctor to schedule genetic testing for Alec so that we are prepared when we want to have kids someday. So that's something that we're planning for as well. And then I think just focusing on our careers and education, I want to eventually get my master's degree is another goal of mine. And then we'll start thinking about having a family.
And I think that's really important. And I was going to ask you about that. So you're going to see if Alec is a carrier.
Yep.
And then, decide on children from there, because that is very important. And who would think, but one never knows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I think it's a big question, but I think that we have options either way. Like I said, my mom went through in vitro, so that's definitely an option. But I think it's helpful to know even this early on, and so that we can prepare down the road.
What other advice do you have for people who are, I know somebody who was late diagnosis, actually your age, and has a lot of health concerns. She's dealing with so much. So I wonder if you have any other thoughts, and maybe relationships are on hold while you have to get healthy. But, for other people who haven't found someone, what is your best advice for them?
That's a great question. I think, focusing on how you can really set yourself up and be your best self. I think I was working a lot on myself and my mental health and my career, just really getting myself to a good place. And that's what I found Alec. And so I think being the best, happiest version of yourself, if you can focus on that and, with CF, really working on your health, and I think the right person will come along, and then you have that foundation of being happy and healthy within yourself and be ready for that person that comes along.
And I think, too, the other thing you said is, I know there are variations of being compliant, especially when you're going to college and you're trying to be, quote, normal, but you have treatments to do and other things like that. It seems that being as compliant as possible and staying healthy is just a huge factor, just so you're feeling good.
Absolutely. It can be difficult. Day to day, there's so much work to be done and so much routine. I think the routine can get can drag on at times. But that's always been I think the most important things that I can do for myself is just to show up for myself and be compliant and do my treatments and take my medicines and, follow all the advice I can from my doctors. That's the biggest way that I can show up for myself and, have some control over my daily life and my CF, even though it is out of my control.
I think you do so much, not only for the Bonnell Foundation, but also for the CF Foundation. You're there for the community. You are raising awareness and helping, not only with this podcast, but with other things you do, like I just said. So what keeps you mentally strong, I guess? Is it doing things for the community? Is it being open? Or is it just living your life, as you would?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that keeps me strong is my support network. My family, my fiance, my friends. I think leaning on those people that I really trust and who I know care about me, that's a really big source of strength for me. I think another source of strength is, working on my mental health and making sure that I feel happy and strong mentally. And so throughout my years working on my anxiety and doing meditation, yoga, things like that to really keep me grounded have been really, really helpful. And then I think really making sure that my health is a focal point in my life, not just negatively, but also positively, and really making sure that I'm staying up to date on the latest treatments, that I'm keeping up with my doctors, that I'm keeping up with the CF community, that I'm participating in, the annual walk in the CF Foundation, that I am able to work with you and your foundation and learning as much as I can about CF and all of the amazing advancements, I think is really helpful too.
And I think it's just, and to use the word basic doesn't even seem right, because it's such a tribute to you that of everything that you're doing. But what I'm trying to say is you're simply living your life and doing the best that you can. And I think you're excelling and doing so well. So it's wonderful to hear and see. And I'm so happy for you. What, if anything else, would you like to leave this podcast as you're talking to other people about your love journey, with cystic fibrosis, and educating your future spouse and in-laws and everybody about what's going on with you?
Yeah, I think, just the message that it is all possible. Having a good relationship as someone that has CF, that has a chronic illness, having a supportive relationship, having a relationship with an amazing future and so many possibilities for a family and for a home, and all those things are possible. And I think, even having CF and all the challenges that come with that, there's so much positive potential for the future. And so I encourage all those who have CF to not give up, to look for love, to look for that person that is going to put their vest on and put their nebulizer on them when they're half asleep. I think that person is out there.
Well, I'm so glad you found your person, and thanks so much for sharing your story with us. You do great work for the Bonnell Foundation. I'm amazed whenever I ask you to do something and you turn it around so fast, and oh my gosh. So we definitely are very grateful. Thank you so much for sharing your story, because it will help others.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and it was so great to talk with you.
If you're looking for a good party, an event where you can mix and mingle with kind people, join the Bonnell Foundation on Saturday, September 9th for the Night of Hope Diamonds in the Sky event. We're going to have fun and raise a lot of money for our programs. See the ticket link in show notes or on our website. We'll see you there. The original music in this podcast is performed by Kevin Allen.
It's not complicated.
Who happens to have cystic fibrosis.
We all got our worries and fears. I know it's got you frustrated. but loving you is so alright.
This has been the Living with Cystic Fibrosis podcast. For more information and to learn more about the Bonnell Foundation, visit our website at thebonnellfoundation.org. That's the BONNELL Foundation.org. This podcast was sponsored by Viatris, Genentech, and Vertex. It was produced by Jag and Detroit Podcasts. Follow our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now.